right, we are back with another Off the Record on the Rocks. We've got a lot to get to. We sort of called it at the end of last episode, talking about Apple stepping out of OpenAI. This was very surprising. OpenAI's big funding round. We covered last week Sam Altman and the 6.7 billions, but not including Apple. And then today, as we're coming on the air, I see across my CNBC headlines, Jeffries downgrades Apple because the quote AI phones are still 2 years away.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
I really do think we called this, that they're pulling out of ChatGPT. Siri ain't ready yet, I guess. And now the market is saying so with a downgrade from Jeffries. This is just at the top of the show. What's your hot take on that one?
Well, I mean, look, we talked about Apple's position relative to everyone else who's investing in AI as being unique in that they pulled out at the last second. No one knows exactly when, but it sounds like it was the final days of deal making and they disappeared. We speculated. Was it because they felt like the other investors were a little too close to
what did they
the
see?
Military?
What did they know?
To DC, to the Middle East. Remember, Sam Altman said, I'm going to go get $7 trillion from the Middle East, which is insane. I don't know anyone has that kind of money anyway. He got orders of magnitude less. We didn't talk about this, but on top of that 6.7 billion, he basically got the world's biggest HELOC. He got a $4 billion line of credit. And on top of that 6.7. So you're talking about working with 10 billion, lots of money. I think that Apple, though, getting downgraded, being pulled out, pulled out of that conversation. But my question for old Mr. Jeffries is, were they downgrading them because they think that serious artificial intelligence is 2 years off? Or is it that serious Apple intelligence is 2 years off? There's a little nuance there because they say AI, they don't say which one.
It's also interesting. We've talked a lot about the separation of hardware and software. And if I'm in the business of controlling markets and taking giant equity stakes in publicly traded companies so that I have board of director purview over these big companies, including those of Apple, maybe I have to keep the hardware and the software kind of on separate tracks as long as I can. Because if they can control both the hardware and the software with Apple Intelligence, oh my, don't we now have a problem? And you have to imagine that in Apple's own planning, they sit down in 2024 to plan out a 10-year plan or 20-year plan or a 50-year plan for how that business survives. They can't win and conquer every market, because the government won't let them do that. So it's an interesting take there of maybe the downgrading on the AI and on the software piece is because they're going to stay focused in on the hardware, and they know that that's the corner of the market that they should continue to own, and they're going to keep letting all these other players, including Sammy Altman with his latest funding round, not including their money, play on their hardware platform.
Well, and that's an actually interesting point because we, from years ago, when we talk about who controls the true access to the metaverse, and we say the metaverse, we mean to Web3, we mean to when the world is on chain, all the subjects that we talk about, who gives you that access? We know that Microsoft and others have been investing in MetaMask, right? MetaMask was this decentralized wallet to help transact in this new system. But that kind of went by the wayside. You don't hear much about it anymore. Then you have this notion of Microsoft partnering with Clear and LinkedIn and saying, we're behind. We need to track eyeballs. We need to track faces. Apple, way ahead. They have your eyeballs, your face. They have for years. Every time you get a new phone, you stand and then you move your head around in a circle like so, and it captures every angle. They got you. So maybe Apple's play too was a little bit of that double agent, that triple agent like we saw from 2 years ago, where you have the head of marketing from Facebook jumping ship and going over to Coinbase just before the IPO. You have an SEC regulator leaving the government regulation and becoming a board member at one of the new exchanges, only to leave 3 months later and to take whatever secrets with him, we think. Off they go. Maybe Apple was playing that game of, hey, we are the hardware kings, and you, Sam Yalman, seem like you're the AI software chat GPT king. Maybe there's a place for us to play together. But maybe you get too close together, like you said, and those regulators, that specter of, wait, can we run all of hardware and software? Because as long as Apple does its own thing, doesn't bring in and acquire or subsume other giant technologies, then there's no regulation that has to happen. It's just all our stuff. There's no monopoly being formed. So maybe Apple full well knew and was starting to cozy in with Sam Altman, get a vibe for what are they working
peek
on.
Behind that curtain, what they got going on over here?
You could pick up those bed sheets and see just what kind of linen Satya Nadella sleeps on. And then you can start asking all kinds of questions of Xbox. And you can start looking over here and all the stuff, the conversations. And the last second, you say, you know what, guys? We saw and heard just the right amount. We're going to go off and go do our own thing. And suddenly Siri, the Apple AI assistant that could have been Chat GPT-ified, isn't. Or maybe we'll hear that Apple goes ahead and hires a whole bunch of OpenAI developers in some poaching coup. It feels like you said that Apple is tripling down on hardware as its core, the anchor to the walled garden is that. And software will always be a complement. But I think their moves are signaling that they really don't think that it's as important as their access to your eyes and your face via their hardware.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a really interesting look at how we piece apart the last 9 months as we head here, second week in October, staring down 30 days to the presidential election in the US. We talked about this kind of heating up of this VC funding. You're starting to see money come off the sidelines, the biggest VC funding ever we just saw in the past 10 days. This shuffling of who is going to jockey for position, who is going to buy and earn favor, and it starts to show up in other interesting ways. I know we're going to get to some of the global stage stuff. I guess I'll stick here on the AI and Meta for a second. So before I move to the global stage, let's talk about our boy Zuckerberg. I know last week I pulled out the Meta glasses. These are not the Meta AI glasses, although you could barely tell the difference. This article that you sent me the other day, where Meta has now launched their AI model that can generate video with sound, cinematic quality video with characters, motion, and audio to challenge OpenAI's Sora, which we've been talking about Sora for more than a year now. And it's one of those frustration points for me, who I really wanted to experiment with these video production opportunities through these AI prompts. And Sora has no public facing tool right now. There's Runway ML. There's the knockoff version Kling AI. None of these are very good, but here comes Meta saying, oh, we can do that, and we'll make it available now with their new and latest AI model to compete again with Sam Altman. Does this guy even stand a chance going now against Zuckerberg?
Well, and this to me kind of has this, I mean, I don't want to say it's like, it's paradoxical, but it does at sometimes feel like Zuckerberg and company are speaking out of both sides of their mouths. And especially considering that Zuckerberg is, we can call him a lot of things. We can call him a puppet. We can call him a cyborg. He's been accused of having these like emotionless faces. You can call these things, but what does he do when the government asks him, which they do often? And it could be anybody. It could be a congressperson, could be a senator, could be even like a sitting member of one of the councils in like the DOJ, and say, hey, we need to come to Capitol Hill and answer some questions. And he does all the time. He loves it. He doesn't seem like he does. He always looks nervous and pale and sweaty, but he's always there trying to do his best, which is interesting because he was so often brought there to talk. And this is something that's in very recent history, I think, for both of us and certainly for all of our listeners, that there would be misinformation disseminated on his social network, right? The iconic social network, Facebook, now Meta, and all of the political ads that were being purchased by bad actors from Russia and from North Korea and from Brazil, and promoting lies, trying to steer the elections in the United States and so forth. Could you believe what you saw with your eyes? That picture? Was he really standing there in front of all those people saying that? I will never know. Well, somehow, some way, we sort of forgot about, I guess, all of that intrigue. And now we're at a place where Meta is launching, well, based on what we're hearing, we haven't really seen, but the most powerful AI generated video creation tool that can create 15-second videos
Yeah.
with full dialogue.
Yeah.
And they're going to allow that to run on Facebook. So tell me what's my disconnect here?
The exact thing that we were told to fear from these social networks, this disinformation during the 2020 election, fake news, Russia, propaganda spreading through social media, and the warnings and all the questions that he had to answer. And oh, by the way, we've got a brand new product 30 days out prior to the 2024 election. But I guess then if you are Zuckerberg, if you control the machine, you control the disinformation machine, literally the factory, the content factory now that can come out of this Meta AI video engine, where I can have anybody saying anything at any location, reacting in real time to memes, effectively the meme creation playing out on Facebook. If you own it, then you don't need to fear it any longer, I guess.
Yeah, if you own it and you can control it, then you can tell what is synthetic.
You know what's real and what's not. If you're the origin source,
you're the origin source. You are the source of truth. You can kind of re-truthify the alternate and false truths. Because the question that the Senator McHenry said, which was very well, very poignant, which was, well, Mr. Zuckerberg, how is it you can guarantee, is it with watermarks that we'll know if the media is synthetic? Is that how it's going to be? And it's like, well, if you don't have to check every slight piece of mail on the way in because you are the post office mailing everything out, well, then you can say it's synthetic.
Well, Mr. Congressman, we are no longer worried about fake information because we will understand what is being created on our Meta platform by our daily active users. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, now he's got an answer.
Well, and if everything is created on his platform, then by definition, it's all fake.
Right.
So in a way, you've actually made it so that when people say, well, God, I saw this crazy video, it's like, well, what'd you see on Facebook? Yeah, well, then it's fake.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's where you make those videos. It's
interesting. Filtering.
It's a judo move. One of my oldest favorite heads of marketing used to say, sometimes when you're up against the insurmountable enemy, you're being called to Washington to answer questions that you and I and everyone knows are almost impossible to answer, but you're being asked those questions. What you do is you got to judo it. You got to bring it in close. You got to grab it by the two lapels of the gi and flip it over and then own it. And so he's like, okay, fine. You guys are all worried about all this crazy stuff. Guess what? I built it. Now I own it. I own the generator. I am the meme.
Yeah.
So
the transformation is almost complete, both in the name transition. We have not used the word Facebook here on this call, on this podcast. We have been talking about Meta. We've been talking about the metaverse that he created. And now we are talking about Zuckerberg and judo. The man has physically transformed himself into this new embodiment of this new and powerful platform. And I guess we're not even entertaining the discussion about Zuckerberg investing in ChatGPT and OpenAI because he doesn't need to, because he's already got the software play. So all of these characters, where Sam Altman fits into this, where Apple fits into this, we haven't talked about Elon, but he's got a play in this in terms of freedom of speech and the message that when he acquired Twitter, I did see something today that Twitter is down like 84% in total value since the
Yeah.
acquisition of
Yeah.
Elon. I mean, he's tanked the advertiser revenue in the name of free speech. Great on the premise. I support the premise completely.
Yeah.
However, I think now, just this week, Elon really cozying up, taking the stage as the CEO of SpaceX. I did find that interesting that his title
Hmm.
in the lower third distinctly not calling out Tesla, but calling SpaceX as his, that was sort of the hat he was wearing. And I think that that's very important. We'll come back to that. We'll put a pin in that in 2025. I'll revisit why I think that's important. But the point there of he is cozying up, he took the stage, campaign rally, and then we've got another character in our scene here, Mark Cuban, really putting his tinfoil hat on with this. Trump and Elon have a plan for the Department of Governmental Efficiency, the DOGE, better known as Doge being fed into the federal treasury to pay off the debts. Unpack this for me. Let's go talk about our boy Elon and where he fits into this narrative from both a technology perspective, and to me really feels like this bridging the gap from technology and politics more so than the other characters, more so than Tim Cook isn't stepping into that limelight. Zuckerberg is not stepping into that limelight where he has in the past stepped into that political conversation. But Elon, he's not holding back. He's stepping in.
Yeah. It's uh, Elon is the Elon SpaceX CEO appearance. I was very reminiscent of. I mean, again, this is, you can watch some footage of these rallies, but this goes back to black and white TV times. There were similar types of rah rah excitement and rallies in the '60s when there was great talk by JFK about getting the United States to the moon and beating everyone. The space race, right, is what it was called. And this had that space race energy, right? This is, I'm going to be your new president. This insane person who is on pace currently, taking a $32 billion drawdown on the $40 billion investment into Twitter. That notwithstanding, he's still on pace to be the first trillionaire on the planet. So when you talk about 80% loss on platform X, I think Elon just chuckles. This is just like, this is sort of table stakes. Hey, I had a bad beat. I went all in on a full house. Turns out someone had a straight flush. So, well, so what? Off we go. And where are we going? We're going to Mars.
Yes,
And that's
we
why we're
are.
out here pointing to Mars, because all of that stuff about how much money I lost and this and that, like, what is that important? We're here because we're going to Mars. And so just that insane rah-rah had that energy of like, well, this person seems like they would spend every last penny to get there, like, or at least send something there. We're going to go to Mars. And that to me has this, it smacks of that era of trying to sell this dream, this vision. But we all know that really, I think what Elon's after is a hand, at least a seat in the front of the bus. That is called the bus of the United States, and driving it in some direction. If he gets given some special position, the way like Steve Bannon and these other knuckleheads from the previous administration had these special advisory jobs, Elon getting in there and messing with the United States economy, questioning the Federal Reserve, doing all these different things, I think calls into question what it means to be ultra rich on the planet. Like, what does it really truly mean to be a billionaire? And that's why Cuban is having none of it, because I think Cuban thinks that he's more important than Donald Trump and Elon Musk combined. He wants no one to forget that he's the Doge father.
Yeah.
He's the Doge father, not these two guys.
Interesting take. I do love that. Yes, he showed up as the CEO of SpaceX. I think the space race themes, getting to Mars. I did see some stat the other day about the number of satellites being put into space over the last, I don't know if it was the last 10 years or whatever it was, but SpaceX has like 80% of the market, with the rest of the world. I think China had 12% of the market, and the rest of the world had 8% of the satellites that had been deployed. So in terms of pure raw data and the man backing up the business case for what he has, the efficiency that he has created with the space program to be able to launch reusable rockets when nobody thought that that was possible. And the moment you do it once, you've now saved the company by a factor of 50%, reduced your costs, do it again. Now you're making money. I mean, the efficiency cannot be argued with. That's the point, I guess. The other thing I think is interesting when you talk about Elon, what it means to be a trillionaire, cozying up and having a seat at the table. I thought it was pretty interesting. I know as we recorded last week's episode, we were, I think, coming out of the wake of Hurricane Helene in Appalachia. And I'm seeing even now in the past 12 hours as Hurricane Milton barrels through the Gulf of Mexico, that Starlink is coordinating with FEMA. So Starlink moving satellites, another Elon Musk company, with a seat at the table, in this case, to show, hey guys, we're worried about infrastructure and people having cell phone reception and first responders. I do credit the first principles mentality. Elon's like, well, look, I've got satellites that I can deploy anywhere, anytime. I own them. Let's move them to areas in need. That's fascinating to me now that there's a private, almost trillionaire kind of making these decisions about what most people would consider basic infrastructure. Especially in times of need and when people need to be able to reach first responders and the like.
And sort of the layer on top of that, which I think is the overarching theme, tying all this together into why I, of course, personally think it's really important and interesting, is this is the first time. Now, say what you will about the insanity of the characters, right? Between Cuban and Musk and Trump and even Sammy Altman and all these other people who are heady in tech. These are people who are operating with a head way in and above the clouds, sometimes feet not on the ground, but with untold amounts of resources. And for the first time ever, the conversation is being had, like, very publicly. Now, the Doge jokes and other things, whatever, but that cryptocurrency, if there is a path to legal tender, to sort of a legal tender status in the United States, and whether that's Bitcoin and Ethereum, or that's just Bitcoin, or it's Bitcoin plus all crypto and Doge, or whatever it ends up being. Remember, Gary Gensler said, well, Bitcoin is not a security. Remember 3 years ago, I told you, I'm still telling you. Doesn't mean it's a commodity. It's not an either or, but I'm still telling you it's not a security. It doesn't pass the Howey test. Okay. Well, we're steering now. Why is Gary coming out in the last couple of months talking about that? It's all about this narrative leading to the election. Could crypto, or let's take away that ugly word, let's just start with Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin something that could become legal tender that could offset America's debt? That's the real big question. Because when you start talking about the American debt question, borrowing against trillions, well, it was always something that I think anyone who's rational and sober would say, well, that's an unattainable number. It's such a big number. Those are the numbers you teach kids about in school. We're like, do you really know what a trillion is? If you stacked a trillion pennies on top of it, you go past the moon 18 times, or whatever they tell you, some insane metaphor. But the reality is trillions, United States debt, which has always been in trillions, is no longer unattainable because there's now a single human, and behind him, other humans,
Gap isn't so
hims
big
and hers,
anymore.
not so big. And it turns out that if you start looking at the value of cryptocurrency in all the DOJ's wallets, and then start doing a little math of like, well, wait a second, how much would this be worth in 10 years? You start thinking, well, maybe there is a path that if the United States were to control Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in a more specific and literal way, by making it legal tender, the way that, say, some folks in El Salvador have done.
Yeah, it's a great segue. I mean, I'll connect the human dots, which is we just came off of Elon Musk cozying up with Trump and the U.S. government, but not more than 2 weeks ago, who came to visit the Tesla factory? None other than El Salvadorian dictator Bukele, to hang out and talk to Mr. Trump, who undoubtedly is holding trillions in Dogecoin, as maybe trillions in Bitcoin as well. And to hear Mark Cuban make that joke, at least to put it out there into the ether of, well, wait a second, could we could we pay the debt with cryptocurrency? I don't know. Now you've got the stories breaking with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, urging El Salvador to limit their definition of Bitcoin in their rules around legal tender, because they're trying to write rules that say Bitcoin is our legal tender. We declared it. We wrote it. And the IMF is saying, no, 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 no. You can't do that. You need to limit that because, to your point, if there's a path to making it legal currency, then you could pay off the debt. And then in the strangest El Salvadorian news, as I was looking at this IMF rule, I found that the El Salvadorian military is combining forces with the who was it? Who are they going with?
The Kenyan peacekeeping force
to alleviate and eradicate gangs in Haiti. Now, doesn't that make you feel good about the El Salvadorians? Wait a second. They're fighting Haitian gangs. We're not even doing that. America won't even touch that. These guys are going in there. They're fighting the good fight. Let them use Bitcoin as their national currency. Let them try.
Well, they're doing it in a really sustainable way. The other article that pops, that third article, is the geothermal processing centers. Think factories that have spinning turbines that are generating energy, electricity, because of the steam and heat that rises from their volcanic activity when water collides with the lava, the magma. Well, when that happens, they've mined 500 Bitcoin in the last however much time, and they did it green, carbon neutral. So you talk about checking boxes.
That's what it feels like.
Carbon neutral.
Yes.
So first of all, Bukele, we love Bitcoin.
Wait a second. Bitcoin's really, really dirty. It uses a lot of electricity. One moment.
We have volcanoes. But what about this? Well, we're doing this. And the IMF coming in and trying to urge. The words they use are urge. Because guess what the IMF doesn't like? The IMF doesn't like countries who don't need loans in American dollars. It's the International Monetary Fund, separate from the World Bank. They're in the same boat. What do? They give loans in American dollars. We've all talked about de-dollarization now forever. El Salvador is like the king. Bukele is the king of de-dollarization because he says, look, man, our legal tender is Bitcoin, so I don't need any of you. So you know the loan sharks are coming and urging them to reconsider because the loan sharks, the IMF and World Bank, don't have any Bitcoin. Why they don't? Or maybe they should soon, who knows? But that to me kind of showed, and then also, like him going to visit Musk and just talk about what they're doing in El Salvador. It hits every single one of the things that you would check and talk about competing, talking, playing on a world stage. A country like El Salvador, in the expanse of Central and South America, is a tiny place relative to the other bigger places, Brazil, Mexico, etc. But they have this unique ability to control a bit more of the world stage as it pertains to this election right now, and everyone trying to figure out the rules around cryptocurrency. So huge points to those guys, but it starts to pave a path where if you are looking at this and saying, wow, it's been now 2 years since they really started this drumbeat, why would the United States not consider Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a way to pay off international loans? It is so easy and so obvious.
Right.
But it calls into question ACH, SWIFT, IMF, World Bank, sanctions against other countries, Iran,
how do you manage
Brazil, Russia. Because as soon as you start saying it's legal tender, if Bitcoin becomes American legal tender, does that mean that Putin is sitting on a whole bunch of American legal Bitcoin? Where does it end? If you start to if you steal the narrative too hard, maybe you get more than you're bargaining for. Maybe you get more the narrative than you wanted.
I don't even know which of those branches to go down. I mean, the first thought I had back to the El Salvadorian army partnering with Kenya, I was like, okay, well, if the IMF is trying to urge El Salvador, to stay focused in on US dollars and continue to take loans in US dollars and don't use Bitcoin, I was like, well, how much money do you think El Salvador owes us? And then why are they going to war in Haiti with Kenya? Does Kenya, it seems like a country that might owe the US money, and I don't know where you went to look up the data, but turns out these guys are in debt.
Kenya in fact, owes, as of this year, owes the IMF 3.5 billion,
Mm.
and also owes the World Bank over the period of many years have contributed 12 billion over the next 3 years. So you could put them in at 15 bills between now and say the 2026. So if there was, say, a need for America to send a proxy force to Haiti, because we already have a proxy force in Ukraine and we already have a proxy force in Israel, then Kenya says yes. And by the way, how much of our debt can we wipe
Yeah,
away if we
we'll just
keep some
send you the
peace?
bill.
And then if they show up and are like, as en route, are like, hey man, we're woefully underprepared to do any peacekeeping in Haiti. We need some real on the street, local gangsters. Who do we know who's in the area who knows how to get rough? Hey, let's call Bukele. Bukele, you need to look good in the eyes of, or rather, do you want to make the IMF and the World Bank look bad because you're out there helping the world and you don't owe them anything? Come on, we got some space on the plane and on the boats. We're going to Haiti, everybody.
Wait, y'all can pay for it too? Come on. They can fund their own military excursion, and I think it does, if anything, checking those boxes on the global stage, putting themselves in a position where you can make a rational argument for the use of a cryptocurrency, in their case Bitcoin, to be a sovereign nation. I mean, full stop. Like there is no argument to say that that's not what he's trying to do. It's exactly what he's trying to do, and I think he's throwing two middle fingers up as he marches in those streets in Haiti. And the next 30 days, I think, will continue to be important as this massive shakeup, as I keep calling it. All of these bets, the roulette table is full, the ball is spinning. It's red or black, baby, and people are making bets. And I think in part of that, this is one I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball as we try to put a bow on all of this. I did see some rumors that the top Robinhood executive is reportedly going to end up replacing Gary Gensler as the head of the SEC in a Trump presidency. So now you're starting to get the people rumors, as you alluded to, people jumping from the federal side to the private side, moving from, in this case, perhaps Robinhood to the federal government, to the regulatory side at the SEC. So this is according to a new report from Politico. A dozen former top regulators, lobbyists, and security lawyers say that Robinhood's chief legal officer, Dan Gallagher, is emerging as the top contender for SEC chair should Trump defeat Kamala Harris in November. He'd be a natural choice, said one former SEC official. Gallagher once served as SEC commissioner from 2011 to 2015, according to his bio on Robinhood's website. But he's been at Robinhood since 2015. Really interesting in that Robinhood has been involved.
he was the Fed.
Then went into Robinhood and now come back.
Fed, went to Robinhood, and now he's going back to the Fed. Now that's the exact story and the exact storyline that we see that keeps repeating. And these kinds of details only pop to the fore if you do a little digging and they're being named. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you'd say, well, gosh, if that guy from Robinhood, Gallagher, is up for, the spot, then why wouldn't your boy Bradley Garlinghouse, not be up for that role? It almost feels like, hey, were you sued by the SEC recently? Yes. Did you put up a fight? No. If no, then leave and never get a job at the SEC. If yes, you put up a fight and took us to court, hey, you seem like someone who might like a job at the SEC. Like, it just has this, they push on people to see like what they're made of. And of course, if you're talking about Robinhood, let's not forget, when you talk about places like Robinhood, who were accused of some serious corruption against the little guy, when the AMC and the GameStop meme stock craze happened, what happened? They're like, oh, our platform isn't stable right now. We're just going to turn it off for 72 hours. What are you talking about? You can't know. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Withdrawals are closed. We close withdrawals while we're still trying to figure out what the error is, and we're doing it for your security. Time passes. Oh, now you can trade again. If you're Donald Trump, who we all know on some level is a criminal, you can decide which level you pick, then you're going to hire someone to run a government regulatory agency. You better go find another criminal. Find somebody
Somebody who
who's
knows how
willing to,
to hide the money.
or I don't know, I must have unplugged the computer. Let me go get behind the thing and plug it back in. It'll take me about 48, 72 hours to do so. Like, people who are okay telling that story are going to get fabulous jobs in an administration who is excited about manipulating the truth and making sure everyone stays rich. That doesn't surprise me, but that is so ridiculous that Gallagher is being up for that job. That's a curveball big time. But another curveball, I think, is like, what if the appointments that come out of whatever new administration, like, could they include people from Coinbase? I mean, Robinhood's pretty close to the government, but Coinbase is for real the government.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Silicon Valley guys are even up for grabs too now. If Elon Musk is right in there, why wouldn't anybody? I mean, you could imagine an executive at Google or Microsoft or OpenAI. Should there be a secretary of technology? And if there it should be, well, why wouldn't it be Sammy Altman? And all of a sudden you start realizing these two are just one and the same. They're very intimately tied together, technology and the government as it is today with Web3 and crypto. And it's shocking, but I guess it should be expected.
I think that is the tightest bow you could put on everything that we just covered, from Apple stock getting downgraded to El Salvador and the IMF going in to fight Haitian gangs alongside Elon Musk and Trump trying to pay off the federal debt in Doge. It is all about big tech, money and power. I don't know how we're going to talk for the next 4 weeks as we lead up to this election of like what's the potential black swan event? What are the markets going to do? We talk about October, it's second week. People are a little spooked. I think the NASDAQ had the S&P had one of the lowest days, biggest drop-offs in a single day. It was down a full percent in one day. I don't know. It feels a little rocky. The geopolitical stage is always wild. It's extra wild right now. And what's it all going to mean as we head into
Well, I
November?
am very excited to track this week by week as we head to the election and beyond. But for my bet, I'll take your roulette analogy. I'm going to take my Bitcoin and bet it straddling the green 0 and 00, because I think we got to expect the unexpected.
I like that bet, sir. We will do it again next week. And I will be coming to you live, I believe, from the Caribbean, depending on what Hurricane Milton does. I got to make my way back down to the Bahamas. I got some unfinished business down there. We will get to that next week when we do it again.
Yeah, three of those properties, three of the Sam Bankman-Fried properties, they just have police tape. You don't even need the hatchet to get through the window. So we'll see what happens.